Welcome to I Love My Club By, with me, your host, Seamus Barry, the podcast that gives you the insight into our local games of hurling and camogie. Join us as we take a look at some of the characters around the county on I Love My Club By. Welcome to episode 4 of I Love My Club, the podcast that brings you closer to our local games about hurling and camogie. This week, I have the very special, the one and only Peter Queally from Ballydurn. Of course, Peter has played for Waterford. He's played for his own club. He also had a stint down in Cork previously. He was part of the 2002 team that won the very famous Munster title for the first time in 39 years. Just looking through his roll of honours, Peter's a Railway Cup in 2000. I suppose he played in 2001. He's a Munster Junior Football Championship in 1999. I was only 7. It shows how old he is. He's a Junior All-Ireland Football Championship medal also, and a Munster Senior Hurling Championship, which I mentioned in 2002. Looking at Peter's managing career, I suppose the very famous win in 2013 with Passage, securing their first ever senior title. And since then, he's brought numerous clubs in Waterford and also won a championship in Cork Intermediate with Youghal. He's brought numerous teams into final in Waterford, and he's probably renowned as one of the best club managers in Waterford in the past decade. Peter, very welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Meadows. Appreciate that. That was a very glowing tribute there. Thanks very much.
I said I had to give it, of course, given your synonymous history with Passage over the years.
Yeah, that was a sweet one, all right, in fairness. Just one that will live long in the memory. I suppose it's special for yourself, I suppose, being part of it. And, you know, it was an epic journey that year that culminated in that famous win.
It surely was. And there's obviously, of course, on the podcast here, I Love My Club By. We're looking to get the stories behind the scenes and when I suppose you started first. Was hurling or Gaelic football, because you would have played both, of course. Was hurling or Gaelic football from a young age involved in your own family, or how did you go about getting interested or involved in GAA?
Sure, the whole enthusiasm came from my dad. My dad he just loved GAA, like, you know, and went to every game. He played a bit with Ballydurn Newtown as well in his day. But really, it kind of stemmed from there. And the school, with a school principal in Newtown, Seamus Fitzgerald, that was big into GAA. He would have been a footballer with Ballynacorty. So there would have been a dual aspect to our school days, you know, in relation to hurling and football. And I suppose I'm grateful too to the lads over at St. Mary's that started up the underage. It's only when I was about 10, I'd say maybe 1980, 81, 82, that St. Mary's was started up. You know, that was underage for Kill, Bumahan and Newtown. And it was Father Condon and a few more were driving forces there. And, you know, it was ideal for me then to play hurling and football with St. Mary's at underage, and kind of went from there then. And that's where the interest started. And the dual side of it, you know, I wouldn't say I was overly more fond of hurling or anything at a young age. I equally liked sport.
I was reading a book recently, which actually, it's a funny one, because when you see, I suppose we put inter-county players on pedestals, and nowadays there's so much more access and you get to see behind the scenes with social media and so on. But I was reading a book recently that said, you said yourself, and you were quoted saying that you weren't the greatest hurler, or your skill level wasn't the highest, but you were aware of that, and that made you work harder. That's a strange revelation to make about yourself.
Well, it's the truth. You know, I suppose that's one thing you'll get with me is honesty. Like, you know, it's I wouldn't have been the most skillful. Now, if the truth be told, I was a lot more skillful footballer. You know, if football came more naturally to me, you know, it was, and I enjoyed playing it. And I would have started off playing senior for Waterford at 19. You know, it was, and probably did so for the first up until I was about 22, 23, and there was a kind of a couple of years there of an overlap where trying to do both, and just decided maybe 94, 95, you know, when I was starting to get a bit more game time with the hurlers, that I would concentrate on that. But at that stage, at 24, 25, and you're playing both, I probably did miss out a lot on the skills of hurling, you know, and I had to put in a lot of work at that stage in ball alleys and stuff, you know, to improve on the skill side of it.
And like, obviously on that, in recent years, it's dying out. We can all see it. I think Owen Cadigan was the last one with Cork, both football and hurling, or Aidan Welch even. Is that something that kind of you're sad to see in a sense, or do you think, obviously being involved in management, that it's just not possible to play both anymore?
It's just not possible. Pure and simple. Definitely at intercounty, but what I've noticed in the last year, 2 years, is it's creeping into club, which that is sad now. You know, I must admit that. And where the perfect example of that is Kilmacud Crokes, who won both, and they've done the double now a couple of times. But I noticed they didn't have any dual players. And that wasn't by chance, you know, because if you look at it, on their football team, they have Rory O'Carroll and Ross O'Carroll. They played hurling for Dublin. You know, so surely they're only about 31, 32. Surely they could play both. But obviously there's some policy there that they were told to pick one. Now they'd have huge numbers and they can do that. But I wouldn't like to see it creep in. I think it's not sustainable at intercounty. Definitely not.
Yeah, I see
it
that.
Would be.
You see with Lockmore, Castellini, sure, I think they had only 3 players that didn't play both.
Yeah,
they're a small enough area. It was an amazing achievement to where they got. Going on from that, then you said there you started playing senior football at Waterford when you're 19. When did you make your breakthrough with the senior hurlers?
I suppose it's a bit infamous now at this stage. 1995 would have been my breakthrough, and was how would you put it? It was a fairly strange way of making your breakthrough. You know, it would have made a lot of headlines back at the time because Tony Mansfield and Peter Power and Joey Carton were over the team, and you know, we played Tipperary. I didn't make starting lineup, but I come on at half time, and we're getting fairly well beaten by Tipperary. But unfortunately, I was out in the middle of the field that day. You know, a game that kind of passed everyone by, not just myself. You know, we're well beaten, but I think with 10 minutes to go, a bit of a melee took place in behind the goal, and just something that rang in my ears leading up to that game. I can't remember which one the lads in the management team said, like, if that happens here, like, one in, all in, like, so. I made a beeline into the row and got stuck in it, and got into a lot of trouble. Something that made the headlines in the papers, unfortunately, because the guards, I was just in Templemore trained to be a guard at the time. The superior there took a dim view of it, and I ended up being double disciplined. You know, I got suspended from the GA and I got suspended in the guards and wasn't allowed to pass out. So it wasn't the best of debuts by any means, but that was my first taste of championship hurling with Waterford.
What, like, on that, right? Because for people that aren't aware, what's your rank in the guards at the moment, Peter?
Guard.
Okay, so no, perfect. So you're a guard, right?
Guard. I'm a community guard in Youghal.
Community guard, perfect. So, like, with that, in terms of a GAA pitch, whether it's football or hurling or camogie or, you know, handball or athletics, whatever the side of GAA it is, if an incident happens, like you seen the Tyrone Armagh match where 5 players were sent off and it's right up against the railing, like, what's your opinion on, like you said, you got double punished? Like, if it's on a field, should it not be left on a field? Now, I understand if there's gross bodily harm caused, but if it's just a melee or a fight in a match, should that not be left on a field and the GAA deal with it?
If it's a melee and there's no malicious damage, yes, which that was, like, it was a melee and there was no one hurt or anything, like, you know. But the other one is a little bit more delicate, where there is serious injury. You know, I think I spoke to you off air about a very promising young hurler here in Waterford who was very badly injured at the weekend in an off the ball incident. And even though we don't like to see it, you know, there is a case, if you want to nip this in the bud, that maybe it needs to go further, like, you know, where someone just turns around and decides to use their offensive weapon, you know, which it is, a hurley, and do a lot of damage to an opposing player, like, you know, is that something that can be just left on the, you know, to the powers of the GA and a suspension while somebody lays in hospital recovering from a serious injury, you know? So
I think,
it is a delicate subject, you know.
yeah, I think that's the one. I think when it crosses the line to obviously
Yeah,
serious injury, it needs to be
yeah,
assessed then by other authorities.
mm,
On that, authorities and I suppose the rules and stuff like that. You've been a manager, you've been a player, you know, you've been involved in inter-county setups, both as a selector and as a player. What do you make of respect towards referees within GAA, hurling and Gaelic football? Obviously, everyone knows I have great exposure at the moment, given the family ties to refereeing at the moment. But what I see is shocking. What's it from your point of view as a manager, first of all?
I won't lie to you. I get frustrated. You know, I do get frustrated. I get very much carried away. I think I have improved. You know, I do know I was very hot-headed in the earlier days of being on the sideline and stuff, and would have crossed the line and you know, got onto referees. I'd like to think I've improved. You know, it is testing at times. You do get involved. Preferably, if I had my way, I prefer to sit in the stand and take myself away from that, because when you get involved with a referee, you're losing your focus. You're not doing your job properly, you know. But going back to the respect for referee, I do know, and I don't know if you remember it, Milos, like we played the Mollerans tournament, the first round of Mollerans tournament 2013, roughly Marchish, you know, it would have been maybe February, March, whatever it was. And Michael O'Brien was reffing the match. And I said from an early stage, you know, I've been involved in teams for maybe 10 years up to that. I made a conscious decision that time, you know, that we'd work on our respect for the referees. Now, if the truth be told, like, I wanted to gain something for us out of it. Like, I felt if we were more respectful, we would get more decisions going our way. Like, and I do think we did get, you know, the rub of the green at times in relation to decisions all year, because we did push it. And I know refs did comment on it, like, you know, that they weren't gotten onto as much, they weren't abused as much by players. And it does, you know, it's great to get that feedback afterwards to say, you know, I have to admire the way the lads, their discipline was. Like, when a ref comes and says that to you, know, so there is a lot to be gained from a management point of view for promoting it, you know, in terms of, you know, a ref coming up and saying that, and maybe marginal decisions kind of, you know, going with you and stuff. So
It's
that's where I
interesting.
become.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because like I have no problem saying it. Ballygunner, regardless of what the decision is. If, for example, say if Philip Manny, Paulie Manny gives away a free, drop the ball, move straight away, never respond back to the referee. Always asking the referee, have they enough time? Always offering them water at half time before the match, always chatting to them. I've never heard an official. Now, I'm not just saying it because it's Ballygunner and they win everything, but I've never heard him abuse a referee, one of the players.
Yeah, look, it's obviously something you have to work on. Like, they're obviously promoting it. That doesn't just happen by chance. Like, you know, it is something, and it's a respect for, not alone for the referee, but they're respecting one another by all buying into it. You know, because one fella crossed the line, you know, it breaks the confidence of everyone else. Like, you know, and I suppose it is something I'd like to see promoted more, or done more, is going down the rugby line, because I like watching soccer, but I for the life of me, I can't understand how referees listen to what they listen to. You know,
It's just madness. But the point you made about sitting in the stand, I agree with you there. Like, I've always said this. A lot of time, like if you reference, say, managers in the past 10 years, Davy Fitz, for example, Brian Cody.
yeah,
Now Brian gets excited, obviously, but Liam Sheedy, they get too involved in games sometimes. And regardless
yeah,
of who you are, whether you're the best manager in the world, when you are looking at something front on and you're in a red rage of an incident that just happened, you're no good to the team because you're not thinking clearly and you're too involved in the game. You're better off up in the stand giving instructions to someone, I think.
yeah. No, I agree, and you know, it's much better for the blood pressure too. I'll tell you, you know.
And like
But,
on the rugby point, I agree with you. I believe it should be just the
um,
captain. It should be a captain's approach. I was at the Ballysaggart de la Salle relegation game last year. I don't know if you're at it. And
no,
the referee you brought up from 2013, Michael O'Brien, Pucky, he was actually doing the game, and he got some abuse that night from both sides. Like, and you could hear it. Like, it was what would you say? It was in the middle of coming to the end of summer in the night time. So, and you're still in COVID time, so there wasn't much activity around Dungarvan. You could hear everything being said on the pitch. And there was good crowd at it. But like for young, and this is the way I look at it. I know people will say you're kind of nitpicking, but I've seen a lot of underage games in the last couple of years, both being involved in passage and doing some officiating. And if you stop it at that level, it does not go through. But the problem is, and I'm not going to blame one particular group, it's not just parents, because everyone just blames parents. It's the coaches, it's the clubs, it's the parents. But if a child under 8 or under 9's at a game and the manager curses, that's just setting the wrong example. And I think the best way to deal with that, regardless if it's a manager, a parent, or a player, from say minor down, any ill-disciplined language towards a manager, an official, or an opposition player, or your own player, because again, you talked about the Ballygunner thing about having respect for yourselves, and like sometimes you do need to, give a fella an old what would you say, a stern talking to. But any cursing underage, straight red, regardless of who you are, I think it's the only way you kick it out.
Yeah, there certainly needs to be addressed from an early age and not promoted, like, which is what you're kind of hinting at there, like, isn't it?
Yeah, like the funny one for me is, right, I'll give you an example and you can dissect this a bit. If I make a mistake as a player and you're my manager, what are you going to say to me?
Next ball, like.
Exactly. Okay, change it up. I'm a referee, you're the manager. I make a blatant mistake in front of you. What's the first thing you're going to do?
Course such.
And that's it. And like, and that's the other side of it, the person in the middle. And again, I'm coming from more of a biased view in the last couple of years, given my brother being at inter-county level now and kind of the level that he's refereeing at. But it's just absolutely shocking. Like a goalkeeper could drop the ball in All-Ireland final and people say, one match incident doesn't affect the outcome. But a referee makes one bad decision, he's still a human being, or she's still a human being at the end of the day. But they get absolutely slaughtered. And I think the only way to change that is to take away a few elements. I was talking to Shawnee Barry previously. You take away the timekeeping, you take away the scorekeeping, and you take away the yellow and red cards that the referee has to write down who got him. And you have a fourth official do it all, and you're connected by earpiece.
There's a lot you could do as well, though, Nicholas. There's one thing I found great was I actually reffed the match once. Just there was a football game over in Ballymahon, and I reffed it. And it's a great experience, even though it's a tough experience. You would learn a lot from it, like, and it gives you a different perspective in relation to what you're talking about and getting onto it. Because even that night, like, I just remember a few fellas getting on to me, like, and I was only stood in, like, I'm kind of saying to myself, I don't need to listen to this, like, and you have the power as well, which I think is very important for a referee to use, like, and not to be taking it either, like, you need to nip it in the bud from an early stage.
I think that's it as well. You look at some referees, obviously Fergal Horn. It's a very famous clip. It was, I think, was it Tipperary against Waterford? Or it was Tipperary against Waterford against someone anyway, and Barry Coughlin was playing full back, and he not really enough of an incident, but something happened, and Fergal Horn went in. It was on a documentary on RT, and Barry says, Barry says he's trying to get me sent off, and Fergal Horn says, "You're not even booked. There's only 2 minutes gone. Give over, will you?" So, and I've seen it in recent years at both club level. Players are becoming, and you're a manager, and you could maybe give us an insight on this. You're telling your players to do everything within the laws, in a sense, to win a game. And you see Kilkenny over the years playing on the edge of that. Players now are, even when they're guilty, they're lying straight to referees' faces. They're, like you said, soccer is creeping in, fellas jumping on the ground, putting their body in the way, winning a free. It's such a hard thing to be doing, refereeing.
It is, I agree with you, and it's actually a big bugbear of mine is freezing cards given out on reactions of players. And even I remember just even going back a good bit, even just club games, and a fella might mistime a tackle, and if you pre-helmets even, like, if you nicked a fella and he ended up getting cut, he got yellow card, maybe a red card even, like, whereas if you had a helmet on, you wouldn't even be a free, like, and it's just on reaction of what happens. And we've seen a few examples of it this year, And
I think
is that promoting simulation? I don't think it is, but it is. It
it's
is. It is. It is a
it's
tough one. Like, you know.
and it is because obviously now with COVID, touch wood, the talks of COVID are gone, and obviously the mask mandate is coming in from next week. But like, if I'm a referee, regardless of who I am, whatever level I'm doing, whether I'm doing a junior, the lowest ranked junior, or an underage game, and there's 200 people there, and like you said, say I go up for the ball and you pull, and there's no malice, and maybe your hurley slips up my hand, leathers me across the hand, and the crowd starts shouting, and the player that got hit is now on the ground screaming, ref me hand. Well, straight away I'm going to think, right, based on his reaction, the crowd's reaction, I'm going to have to send this fella off.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, that's the tricky one in relation. Another one of the tricky scenarios that refs find themselves in, like, is what action to take based on the reaction of the player that was hit, or the crowd, or whatever it is, like, so it's
I think the point you made is very good about doing a ref in a game. I think the other way is brilliant as well. Like, a lot of the times you look at referees, and sometimes they're people that were behind the scenes in their own club, but I think it's better off, and it's not a requirement, but if you actually played some level where you have a better understanding, like you said, where someone might see a smack and say, Jesus, that was wicked, and you're like, I actually played the game, that's not that bad, I can tell you now. It just sounds a lot worse than what it is.
Yeah, definitely. I know it. And look, it helps with respect too, like, I think players, especially elite players, like, will respect the fella more, like, if they know that they played at a decent level, like.
Yeah, it's of course it's a topic that you could debate all night long. Moving on, there's a couple of aspects, and there's one really exciting one that I want to talk to you about. And of course, we said earlier that you've been a guard for a number of years now, down in Youghal as a community guard, and you've gone back in recent times. And I want to ask you, first of all, why did you go back to college before we get into what you've done?
So I could retire. Like, I have an option, that's part of the guards. Like, you can do your 30 years and retire. If you join at 20 and you have 30 years and you retire at 50, which to me is quite young to be doing nothing. Like,
yeah,
I joined at 23, so I can retire in a couple of years, and I'm 53. And again, I just felt like that's too young to be smoking the pipe and reading the newspaper every morning. But going back to the original point, I could actually stay on till I'm 60. But at this stage now, I have enough of kind of on social hours and nights and working Christmas and shift work and what have you. So I felt coming up to retirement a few years ago, I'd like to retire, but I'd like to still be doing something. So I suppose one of the things that appealed to me was, and it came through the community police and stuff, I go into schools and I give talks on drugs and alcohol. So I looked at different courses around the place. I saw a nice diploma course up in UL, a drugs and alcohol addiction course. So I did that. It was quite intense for a year, very educational, and it was very broad now as well. So I kind of, when I was finished, I was like, Jesus, what good is this to me now? Like,
yeah,
it's great, I need it, and I got a lot of knowledge, but what am I going to do with it? And I suppose one of the modules that stuck out was around the cures and stuff for addiction. And one of the main cures for addiction is psychotherapy, like to go to a counsellor or a therapist.
Yeah.
So again, I Googled that and found a good course up in CIT, a psychotherapy course there. It's a 4-year degree course. And I did a year of it, and I found it quite heavy, very rewarding and very good. I'm glad I did it, but it's not something I wanted to carry through, counselling. It is quite heavy, and there is a lot of work that you have to do on yourself and stuff. So I did a year of that and just felt I would have preferred not to be raking over the past with people, in a counselling scenario. Yeah. Maybe looking to the future, and that's where coaching came into it. The difference in coaching and therapy would be, therapy kind of looks back on your past, whereas coaching is kind of building for the future, and setting targets and working on people's strengths and how they can say the one I did was health and wellbeing coaching. So people that are in addiction that got out of it, what are they going to do now?
Yeah.
So they sit down with a health and wellbeing coach and they plot out and talk about what they want to do in the future and make plans and targets and goals and what have you, And I suppose the thing about the coaching course I did then last year is, it's quite broad, and it's something I actually used in Romore and I had one-to-ones with lads and I got them to set targets and goals and, they do the talk and I just listen, and I ask them like, okay, your target is to improve on this part of your game. How are you going to do it? And, what time frame you put in that? What will you do? How are you going to commit to that? And that's a kind of a general synopsis of coaching. And I would like to do a little bit of that as well as the health and well-being side of it, maybe performance coaching. It's just, there's a young snooker player in Yana, I'm going to do a bit with him and stuff. So I find that quite interesting to sit down with somebody and go through their targets and their goals and how they set about them and stuff like. And I know a good guy that I got a bit of info from and had a few chats with as well as Shane Sullivan. He's excellent at that, and he's a great business going and has worked hard at it too. So he's a guy that I will sit down with in the future before I retire and get some ideas of him as well. Like.
Yeah, Shane has been in the company I work in before. He's great to listen to. Like without getting too off topic, how do you find the time to do all this? Because like I know you now 9 years, right? Coming up 9 years, 10 years, and no matter what it is, you always have something on. I know your wife personally. I know the two lads. Like between family, guards, hurling, college, you all. And
can I throw one more into the mix there? We're building a house at the moment. That is the biggest nightmare going. Just give me all the others together and I get on grand. But this house is doing my head in.
The one, like, and that's the thing I really want to reiterate here is, like, I've known you all that time, regardless. I've had obviously my own issues and in terms of health-wise with sport, and obviously I've had my own mental health issues over the years, and regardless of what it is, that's the one thing that, and I was only speaking to some of the Passage lads that you would have, of course, trained over your period with Passage, and they always said it, that you always give people time. And that's something that I was talking about before I launched the podcast on the News and Star. Is my nanny always said, and of course I'll come to that in a second, a woman that you knew, is that giving your time is the easiest thing to give to someone.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, look, I've seen it in the community policing side of things. Like, it's just like it's a great number to have in the guards, like, as community policing, because you're working with people, Whereas before becoming a community guard, I was working against people. It's probably a lousy way of putting it, like, but you know what I mean? Like, you're going out and you're catching people for speed or whatever it is. You become a community guard and you're actually working with people. You're going to visit the elderly and talk to them. And what I found from that was, is just to give you one example, like, this woman came up to me and says, any chance you call up to me uncle there? He's 95. He's a cranky old bastard, and I'm just putting you in the picture now, he says, and he just likes a bit of company and stuff, and he won't take his medication, he won't lock his door, and you just have a chat with him. So I went up with him anyway, and he was sitting there in the window, and he looked kind of surly, all right, and I said, Jesus, here goes. I go in anyway and I talk to him. He was the most interesting guy you'll ever meet. Like, he spent 40 years in America, and he went through it, and he was telling me about it, his life story, and like, someone who's 95 has a lot to tell, and like, his poor niece or whatever that set me up probably never asked him all these things or never sat down and spoke to him. But it's amazing how she had this concept of him. Yet you sit down and talk to him like he's the most interesting guy, and all he wants to do was a bit of company and a chat and stuff, like, So everyone has a story to tell.
Everyone has a story to tell, and like, again, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel when it comes to topics and ideas here in the GA, but I seen it over COVID and Passage as well, and it's really interesting that you just said that, because the GA's role within a community, like, you're from a rural place, Ballydurn, I'm from a rural place, Passage. Do you think, like, you could get maybe teams involved? I know teams have a lot on and a lot of time wise, but say like the off season from October to February, when the colder months and darker months come in, like that, going to someone's house who's 95 and just doing something for a neighbour. Do you think we could? Because I've recently been in I've worked with Make-A-Wish, and I've recently started working with Alone, and they're trying to recruit more and more people. And it's exactly what you said. You go sit with someone in a house maybe for an hour or two, you check in with them once a week. Do you think we could be doing more?
We could do more, but having said that, we are doing a lot. You
Yeah.
know, yeah, we like, you know yourself. It's when the need is greatest that they kind of rally around. You know, just take an example of you know, a club member dying or something, like, you know, that's when the GA community really kicks in and rallies around and supports, like.
Yeah.
You know, I saw it with my own sister and father, like, you know, the help that we got around the GA club. And I'll be honest, like, we give out about our own GA club, myself and my father, as much as we praised them, like, you know. And I just remember when my sister passed away, he said, look, you know, all are giving out. He said, look what they did for us in the last number of days, like, you know, the organising, the work and the volunteer and the support and everything that they gave us. And he just said, you know, I could see in him, like, you know, he wasn't a man for rich on praise and talk, like, but it just meant so much to him, like. And we would have, like I said, we would have given out a lot about the GA and club and stuff, but it was all came home to him then, like, you know. So,
It's,
and then
yeah.
look at times games, and you seen it yourself, you know, different tragedies in passage and that, like.
It is. It's unique. I was only literally, like, this takes me back. I was talking to someone recently. I covered, of course, the Ballygunner, Ballyhale All Ireland final, and someone said to me the usual stuff, rivalry between Patrick and Ballygunner. How do you feel going up and all that? And it's exactly comes back to what you said. We lost a member of our own management team a couple of years back, and like one of the first couple of lads down to the house were the Ballygunner lads, and it just everything is
Yeah,
put to one side, you know. And
yeah.
it's brilliant in the GA. And I've my boss in work. Like, he loves rugby, and he's from Kilkenny, and strangely, not no interest in hurling, but never played it around like that. And he always says to me, like, the GA is like a cult in a sense, and you hear different things, but in actual fact, when you talk about this and you talk about the community spirit, you know, the game's being televised now on online, and elderly people get to see him if they're not mobile. It's actually, as much as we're both involved in it, it's a great organization to be a part of.
100%, Smithers. You know, it is like, and you mentioned cult and, you know, the social side of it. Like, you know my eldest lad Richie, like, you know, and like, Richie never played any sport or GA, like, going up, like, you know, but he got a fierce interest in it the last couple of years, came to all the games, like. And he's turned 18 this year, you know, so he can play adults. And he couldn't wait to go down to the Ballydurn training sessions and be part of it, like. And that's what it was, like. He just, you know, for him, like, this was it, like, this was his social acceptance, like, you know. He was waiting to become part of the club and to socialize and train and just be part of it, like. It's nearly kind of an acceptance, like, this is a group now that I know I can go down and I'll be accepted and I'll be part of this group and part of this association, like, you know. And it's, you'd see it in him, like, the difference in the last couple of months since he joined in and stuff.
And you think, obviously, with that, there's, like, I've always said it, regardless of if you're, you know, if you're Peter Queally or you're Millhouse or you're Seamus Barry, whoever you are, regardless what your level is, there's always a role for you within a GAA club, whether you're good at finance, good at organisation, if you want to be a referee. Like, I think that's what we really need to highlight, that yes, 100%, when the All Ireland final is on and Noel Connors goes out to represent Passage or Owen Kelly, that's absolutely brilliant. But at the same time, it's all about the people that, like the likes of my uncle, Paul Barry, that runs the junior B team. Like, a funny story, he was trying to get players for a game one day, and he actually rang someone, and they said, "Where are you?" And he said, "Is there any chance you could be in town for a match at 6:30?" He said, "I can't. I'm in the Lebanon. I'm on duty." like, you know, like, it is great, and you always will have the pinnacle of them one or two to get through, but the lifeline of clubs is the people in the background. Like, for us, for example, Anne-Marie Fitzgerald does absolutely savage work in the background. Of course, her own daughter Aoife was bet, unfortunately, by St. Ryan's in the Camogie All-Ireland semi-final last weekend, just gone. But, like, these people in the background, Anita Quillen over the years, my own mother, Orla Bulger, there's so many people. Of course, the man we both know famously is Lele, Ray Barry, with both my own club and your club in latter years. Like, there's so many people in the background, and like,
But I'll give you a perfect example, Milo. Sorry for cutting across you now. I'll give you a perfect example when you're on that. George Henderson.
Yeah.
Like myself and Liam Carey, we're looking at somebody that wouldn't get involved halfway through the season in 2013. Do you know anyone that will get involved? We need someone else in the background. And we just remember George from being at the matches and being a supporter. We asked him along, and she just hasn't looked back since. And he would tell you he's done a lot of publicity work, about his former addiction problems and stuff. And it was the makings of him being asked along and being involved, and he just lives for it. He loves it, so he does.
It's mad because obviously, like, I love George. I get on brilliantly with George. George and my brother are quite close as well. And in recent times, obviously after George, Edward Mully, of course, got involved. And like, he's the same. Like, he doesn't play sport, but he lives and breathes for match days. And even Nicky said it to me recently. Like, he was like, I have to get back and more involved with the club, whether it's with a team or just playing junior B on goal or something, because I just miss that.
Yeah. And there's a George and a Molly in every club, to be honest with you, probably,
There is. Shawnee Barry brought it up the last day as well. But on that, like, when players retire, because inter-county just seems like you have to be 25 and retire nowadays. It's getting shorter and shorter. It's crazy. But when players come to an end with their club, in terms of, say, senior, intermediate, whatever it is at adult level, is there a point to be made that we should follow the route of soccer and have an over 35s? Now, I know people will have an argument, junior A, junior B, junior C. I played junior A 2 years ago, and the Waterford minor captain was playing full back. So forget about saying old fellas are playing junior, because they're not.
It's a hard one, because you could have played us, and if you were full forward, you would have more than likely been 12 or 13 years younger than the man that was full back. Because we have Andy Hubbard, who's still hurling at 46. So.
Well, you call her hurling. I don't call her hurling. Now, I've seen Andy in action.
I'll be careful now, Millers. You could be marking him again this year, but he's back again. So
go easy back.
He's back. Yeah.
Do you know what I'll do? If we get Ballydurn in the group stage, I'll play junior B.
So look, I see where you're coming from, but with clubs like our own one now that would be struggling for numbers, like retiring before you're 35 isn't an option. If you could still hurl, you're hurling with the first team, So
what if you went and like, obviously we're the same in a sense. Only recent years our numbers have transformed, but in a sense of, instead of being a Ballydurn playing, say, it would nearly be an area. Like, for example, the Barney Galtier would have a team, or it's not to run off a championship. It's just lads might train once a week, get together, fellas from Roemore, Passage, Ballygunner, Mount Sion, that are between, say, the ages 35 to 50. They don't necessarily have to play a game. It could just be a puck around, but it's for the mental health side and social inclusion, that when you finish up, like, given it either injury has made you retire early, or work commitments or family, and you're just kind of cast aside.
Yeah, look, there would be something there. I'm not sure about the buy-in, but you definitely would get some buy-in. To what level? I honestly don't know. I know it depends how competitively you played it too. Like, I know I had this conversation with Gavin O'Brien during the week, like, and when he's finished, like, that's it. Like, he doesn't want to see you hurley, or and it's not even that. Like, I even mentioned to him, about doing things competitively. Like, you do enough of it, like, running and things like that. I would have no interest in doing anything competitively now. Like,
it's mad, like, because you see Liam Carey, of course, Liam quite well. Liam had a surgery only 2 years ago or 3 years ago on the hip. He's now doing marathons and triathlons.
Yeah, I meet Liam fairly regular up here in Dungarvan still, and he's a fair man, all right, to do all them things, and he trains harder than he ever trained probably as a player, with the level of the stuff that he's doing at the moment.
I think it comes down to mindset, like anything. I think you're just if you are that way, like, whether you're in work, like you said, competitive level, you just want to always do the best that you can possibly do.
Yeah.
Which is
No,
not
it's
not a
true.
not a bad thing. But on that subject, how do you shut off? Because like I listed earlier, you're constantly on the go with your job. You know, your family. You're building a house. You went back to college. You're coaching Romore, or sorry, you're managing Romore. You're doing a bit of coaching with Stars. Like, what's Peter Queally's downtime?
I'd like to say playing golf. I just don't have time to play golf. I will when I'll be honest. It would have to involve getting on a plane and flying out to the sun, and it takes two days then to switch off. Like, you know, you're on your third day, and yeah, I'm grand now. I'm switched off. But it would actually take that long to unwind. Like, you know, and put the phone away and not take any notice of it. So,
Is that trying to say that your tan is real and not fake?
Yeah, it's real, Milhouse. It is real. Yeah. I got that from me dad.
I had to get that.
It's a farmer's tan.
I had to get that in. Like, would you read books or anything, or would you listen to podcasts? Because obviously you have to do a lot of driving between games, and I have an insight. I was very fortunate back in 2013 when you joined us that we actually used to go in and out to training together, and we created quite a very strong friendship off the field and on the field in both ways. You know, mutual respect, and like I always thought, geez, if I'm having to travel around and like you're going obviously from Dungarvan area down to Romore and then with SARS to Cork, like you must have a lot of time in the car. Is it radio or is it just you're trying to think of what's coming ahead in the training session or a match?
It's both. On the way, it's thinking, and even though I shouldn't really say it, but like my young fella comes with me and he's a talker, like, and I'm kind of there to him, like, you know, Richie, just give us 10 minutes. I need to think. I need to focus here. Like, you know, I need to plan and stuff, like, and so yeah, there's no switching off, going to train, come back. Yeah, just listen to the radio and stuff. On the podcast and that, I'd say during COVID, I got into it. I used to go for walks in the Greenway and stuff. We're right beside it there. So, and books, I read books. I would have read GA books maybe 20 years ago. I find them a bit mundane now at the moment, just kind of repetitive and stuff. I like to go to other sports. I've read some very good books on other sports. There's a Steve Bylis book there on toughness. He's a basketball background. Find that book excellent. The All Blacks one there that Steve Kerr wrote. I can't remember the name of it. There's a few other ones. Born to Run there is a running one. It's a super book as well. Like, you know, I have found some nice books in other sports and stuff, and I tend to look for something diverse like that now, like just to get a different outlook, a different viewpoint on things. Like, you know, I find that helps a bit. It's
an interesting one because someone only said to me recently, I was going up to cover obviously the Ballygunner Ballyhale game, and I went up on my own. I made it a conscious decision to go up on my own. I got the early train in order to go to the Cultural Arts Museum, something I would have never looked at before.
You weren't at a Cultural Arts Museum. Who are you trying to talk?
I no joke. I was up at the Cultural Arts Museum, and
stop me.
My friend said to me before I went up, I tell you, Peter, I'm a changed man since 2013.
Oh, jeez.
And I went to the museum.
You went to the zoo. Weird.
No, they won't let me out if I went in there. But I went to the museum, and after, I went to the game, and I must say, when I got home, like, I love sports, don't get me wrong. And like, I was keeping an eye on the Man United score just to slag some of the lads in passage. And obviously Ireland were playing France as well. But the cultural arts was completely out of my comfort zone. It's something like you're on your own, you're aware of what's going on. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. There was no one else in the museum. I had to place myself. I was looking at, and there was a piece on the Troubles and all the gear that was used and stuff like that. Michael Collins, the jacket he was killed in. It was just, and it goes back to the topic with Joran about books. We sometimes need to just step out of our comfort zones in order to try kind of discover ourselves a bit more.
Where is that, do you mind me asking?
So as you come off the train in Houston, it's literally 10 minutes. It's the second stop on the Lewis, and it's completely free. Anyone can go in there.
I think I was in there, actually, believe it or not, now that you mentioned. No, I wandered in. I didn't plan to go in there. It was beside the court. I got a break in the forecourts there beside it. So
yeah, that's
exactly I do.
It's
a kind of you walk around in this square in the buildings there, isn't it?
Yeah, it used to be like an old barracks.
Yeah.
It's but for anyone that's in Dublin, you know, especially with games coming up in the summer, there's a lot of free tourist attractions like that. And it's funny because I would have done the usual thing before. I would have got the train or drove up straight to a pub and then maybe went on to the match. And the pub is something I want to bring up with you, because you mentioned earlier drugs and alcohol, going back to college, and you said something off air earlier, and it's something I asked you, could we talk about? And you said no problem. You said, when was you had your first drink?
I was about 16, I suppose.
And that was your first time playing adult?
Well, yeah, I would have remembered playing with Ballydurn when I was 16. Like, I would have turned 16 that November, and so I would have played a championship with them then the following March, say. And I do remember getting very much involved in the drink culture at that age, even, like, you know, and going to Cards Cross afterwards and having the pints and up to Newtown and stuff, and having a few more pints and that, like, you know. So.
And then when was your last drink?
Funny enough, yeah, just tied in with my last game. I would have played in goal when I was 47 in a county final against Ardmore. We won't mention the scoreline on the air because it was quite hard. And I would have drowned my sorrows afterwards with all the lads. And for some strange reason, that was, I'd say, October, November. That following January, I decided to stop drinking, and I haven't drank since. So that's 4.5 years ago now. So, and it's something I wasn't conscious of. It's only something I'd say it was a year or two into it, and just dawned on me. Wow, I said, I said to myself, like, wow, I said, I had my first drink when I played my first game, and I had my last drink, more or less when I played my last game, like, so I would have drank all through my playing career, like, and it would have been the run of the mill kind of stuff. Like, I wouldn't say I was overly a big drinker, but I would have binged and that, like, so.
And like, obviously we're not, with alcohol or vices or whatever people get up to in their own time is their own business. And I'm not, condemning alcohol. I drank before, I don't drink anymore. I'm sober now in the last coming up to 14, 16 months. And there is a realization at some stage that you have to look at the GA, and I'm not trying to look at it in a negative sense, but there seems to be, like you said, the culture. I don't think it's going to be gone in my time, but there is a culture. Alcohol and GA go together.
There is, yeah. Look, and I'll be honest, I wouldn't like to just tarnish GA either, because it is a societal thing. My big thing around alcohol that kind of annoys me is communions. It's communion is all about the drink that goes with it, like, and you have to remember at the end of the day, like, communion is about your 7-year-old child, like, why does it have to be all about drink and parties and this, like, and that's the one that kind of gets under my skin a bit. But I suppose my thing on alcohol and drugs is education. Just to give you an example, I would have learnt through various different things that alcohol is a depressant. It gets you down, like, you have the initial high, but then you get down. So when I lost my dad and my sister in 2003, like, I made a conscious decision, right? I'm not gonna drink here. Like, I'm not gonna go on a mad session because I'm going to be depressed enough as it is without adding to it. Like, but my point there being, like, that education, I knew from, finding out somewhere along the line that was a depressant. So my big thing then is education. Like, is educating people around the dangers of drinking excess alcohol or taking drugs and stuff. Like, if you can educate people, let them make a learned decision then whether they want to go down that road, or how badly or how much they want to drink and take drugs and that.
With education, I find that interesting because, I've been an advocate in my own company for the last couple of years, and anyone that knows me knows that I'm quite into my philosophy and mindfulness, and I do a lot of meditation. And it's purely the reason because I suffer from mental health issues is why I gave up alcohol. You mentioned the depressant. I might go out, say, on a Friday, and that's grand. It might not be a massive session, and I could come home, say, 1 or 2 in the morning. I'm depressed for nearly 6 weeks after alcohol. And it's the reason why I had to give it up. I was getting to a stage where I actually had to go seek help. It got quite bad. And I hid it all from everyone because at the time there was quite a big mental health surge in the area, where unfortunately with a few tragedies, and because of that, I wanted to just hide mine and not tell anybody. And it comes back to education, because I was ashamed. And when my grandmother died, I lived with my grandmother for 8 years. I didn't know how to deal with that. Not that no one should have, but I was never taught how to deal with that. And for years after, like I was 16 when she passed away, and I had to go move back in with my mother, which I'd never really done, live with my family. And when I hit 18, I just went nuts. I went absolutely crazy. Like anyone who knows me, like I remember I had to have my 21st before, a couple of weeks before it. You asked me to do it on 2013 just because we're running into championship, and that was grand. But I went absolutely crazy for like 3 or 4 days in the middle of coming into a season where I was actually very fit, and I was in contention and starting games, and I was putting all that aside just so I could go out in the piss. And it wasn't even that I wanted to go on the piss. It was just to try escape from what was going on in my head. And I think that's the education point. Like sometimes you said there about the communion piece, and I agree with you. Communions, confirmations, baptism, anything in this country, opening an envelope, turn to alcohol. The reason being is sometimes we see it as a reward, and sometimes we see it as an escape. But if we're taught maybe in a younger capacity in secondary school, because I think primary school, we let them develop themselves, it's too young of an age, but secondary school, actually teach people, instead of woodwork, now there's skills that need to be taught, but religion, different things, life skills, when you move out, how to use a washing machine and oven, how to read your taxes in your paycheck. But the main one, how to be aware and recognize that you're okay and when you're not okay, and that you don't need substances to get away from it, and acknowledge that it is okay.
Yeah, and look, I know from the course I've done as well, Millhouse, that they are nearly coming to the stage now of promoting going in at even a primary school, because they reckon when they get to secondary school, they've made their mind up to take drugs and take alcohol. That's
scary now. Like,
yeah, I know it is scary, but that's what the learned people are saying now, is that's the time that you should nearly try and educate them as regards the dangers if they go down that road, what can happen and stuff like, or what are the side effects, the health effects, the psychological effects like. And look, I know from liaising with schools on a regular basis now. I sat down with the chaplain in the all public school there last Tuesday, and we had a good chat and put out a timetable for second and third years in the school to have a talk to him. And the biggest issue he has, and he does a lot of one-to-ones as well, like, is abusing cannabis, and the whole thing is that they come in and they see cannabis as being a harmless enough drug, like, something that they reckon will soon be legalized, which it may be, but that's only for regulation purposes, not for the fact that it's harmless or anything like that. The number one drug of abuse in Ireland is alcohol, which is legal, like. So even if they legalize cannabis, it's still going to be an abusive drug that's going to cause huge problems. And again, like, there's a kind of even a parental thing around it where, it's deemed as harmless, and sure, aren't they using it for medicinal reasons? They are using it, but the addictive component in it is taken out of it. Like, it's the cannabinoid oil that's not addictive, like.
Yeah.
But cannabis is, like, and it's the presentation I do to the classes, like, the first thing I ask them is to stand up and get involved, and who here thinks cannabis should be legalized, and it's fairly split, like, and half do, half don't. And I tell them, like, well, I feel it should, and I do, like, I honestly feel it should be legalized, simply because of regulation. There's more regulation around it than, like, there's no regulation at the moment. Like, the example I give to you, Milos, is when you were 16, would you drink a bottle of beer not knowing it was either 4% alcohol or 25% alcohol?
You would, yeah. You just drink it, yeah.
Yeah, but would you have drank it back then, knowing? Because that's what's happening with the cannabis. The cannabis in the 80s was harmless, but the cannabis now is way more potent, and that's what's causing so many problems. Like, there's no regulations around it, so they're taking stuff that they don't realize how potent it is because of that. Like, and even some of the harder drugs, like, are being mixed and stuff, and who knows what's been put into it? Like, it's.
But that's the other. It's the other side of it, like cocaine and I suppose what's being called recreational drugs nowadays, the likes of ecstasy, cocaine, speed. No one has a clue. Like the people that are taking them have no idea what's in them, none whatsoever.
No.
And yet you'll see people online saying, "I'm not taking a vaccine or an anti-vaccine," and yet they will take these things off a toilet in a nightclub, not knowing their heart could stop at any minute. It just, I don't know how you change that. I think that's a topic for another day. But there is one thing I want to ask you, and it is a personal question. And if you don't want to chat about it, I completely understand. You mentioned your sister and father. Did you have any? Because you made a conscious decision to be sober in a sense after that, because you knew that alcohol was a depressant. Like, how did you try to deal with that, Peter? Because it's like, I'm just going to say it straight out. That's horrendous, especially two people so close to you.
Well, the truth is, Milos, I didn't deal with it. Like, that's straight up. Like, I did not deal with it. Like, I didn't get the help that I needed. Like, I thought it was tougher than I was, and it was a case of driving on and carrying on and trying to fill maybe my father's shoes and sort things out. And it was a very trying time, like, and it's something that dragged on a long time, like, in our family, like, because I'm not so sure any of us dealt with it too well, like, and funny enough, like, I remember going to a counsellor probably 6 months after it, and I had finished up playing at Waterford around the same time my dad passed away, like,
Yeah.
And I sat down with this counsellor and I spoke for an hour. And it's only now thinking back, or well, say years ago thinking back, I kind of spent all that time talking about finishing up at Waterford. And this is something that I think a lot of inter-county fellas kind of hide. How hard it is to finish up playing and stuff, like. And I know from talking to that counsellor, he had previous inter-county players in with him, like, that struggled with retiring. So, I didn't get to deal with, the grief that I was feeling then. And I know from doing the courses, the psychotherapy especially, like, it could be 2 years, 5 years after you lose a loved one that you're ready to go down the route of therapy and counselling. And I obviously wasn't ready then. I was dealing with finishing up with the county at that stage. I hadn't even got to the stage of trying to deal with losing my dad and my sister, like, so I found that interesting, looking back on it.
Yeah.
But I never went back, I never got the help that I needed. And even, remember I said I did a psychotherapy course there recently. There's brilliant group therapy in that. As part of it, you have to, like I said, it was heavy going for the year and you had to do a lot of work on yourself. So obviously in that group therapy, this is only 2019 now I did this course. And like, my sister and my dad had passed away in 2003, so it's 16 years later. So a lot of stuff I brought up in the group, you have to talk in these groups, and they're brilliant. Like, I really promote group therapy to people, like, for coming out of your shell and dealing with things, and just to support and like-minded people that you're with in the rooms and stuff. I remember spending 2 hours talking about going back on that. And, I wouldn't say I got emotional. I welled up a bit, like, but I didn't cry. And I thought, Jesus, there's something wrong with me. Everyone seems to cry in these group things, but I don't. So I remember getting into the car around 9:30 that night, and I was driving out the Jack Lynch tunnel there and stuff, and I started breathing heavy, like, I was, Jesus, what's wrong with me, like, And I got onto the motorway, and my breathing got heavier, and I was actually getting a panic attack, like. I never got one before. I never really knew what it was like. I had to pull in at Middleton. I couldn't wait to get off the motorway and actually pull in and get out and get a bit of fresh air. I had to ring people, what's wrong with me? And I Googled it and all, like, what's this? And I said, it was a panic attack, like, but it was, that was the first time I got to actually try and deal with it, like, so it was all coming up, like,
So it was a build-up of emotion coming at you.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a pure build-up and not dealing with it previously. And as the facilitator said, like, when I spoke to him then the following week, like, it's like a little knot in your stomach, like, and it gets smaller with years, but it's still there. The knot doesn't go away, like, even though it's smaller. So I was trying to unravel that even 16 years later, and that unraveling kind of led to the panic attack then.
It's mad because I finished a book there before Christmas. Dermot Whelan, the presenter with Today FM, he's a
Oh yeah,
yeah, he does mindfulness and meditation now. But his all sparked from the same thing. He was driving down to do a gig in Kilkenny, and he thought he was dying. Pulled in on the side of the road, rang an ambulance, and he was having a panic attack because he didn't know how to deal with the emotion of feeling pressure that there was going to be nearly 2,000 people at his gig.
Yeah, Jesus.
And it's mad because, like, particularly your career, both sporting wise and work wise, like, you're built for fight or flight. You know, like high pressure games, high pressure situations, being the guards, and that's why I asked earlier about the downtime and how does Peter Queally turn off, because we're seeing more and more, especially with COVID. You know, the work-life balance is being thrown around a lot, and people are now being the flexible option of being in an office or working from home. And I think more than ever, we're probably more in tune with wellness and looking after ourselves. And that's why I really wanted to see, because obviously you won't mind me saying this, you are the generation before social media came in, in terms of the intercounty. Like, how would you say it is?
How dare you say that?
Come here now, you
I was able to put on that Zoom on my own tonight.
Actually, you had to go down to your director of technicality. I thought, no, at the start. See, I have no problem bringing you out. No, but the point is, how would you say like an inter-county player feels nowadays? Like, their whole life is controlled. They can't. Not that they. I know we speak about alcohol, but like, you're even targeted walking down a street now. Like, I'd say you can't even do your shopping without people coming up to you.
It is hard, yeah. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they deal with it, even because even some of the comments on social media and stuff, I'm not on it. I make a conscious decision. I even stop buying newspapers because of the negativity attached to it and around matches and criticism and what have you. Like, but you know, even Richie the odd time would show me, look at this, like, and he brought up something there actually last week, and I was appalled by it. It was a page, and it was, I don't know, I didn't even ask him what it was, but it was to deal with the kind of backlash from Ballyhale and Ballygunner, like, and
yeah,
it was all critical of Ballyhale. They were a disgrace and they were this and they weren't, you know, they were no way gracious. And saying that's not right. Like, they were deflated. Like, but what were we expecting from them? Like, and you know, even things like they were saying there was bad taste in this and bad taste, and I said that's nonsense. Like, you know, and it's just over analytical and you know, I was appalled with, like, and look, that's only one. You know yourself, there's thousands of examples of people being cut to shreds on social media. You know, I mean, you're on about referees getting stick, like, but the level of criticism that is leveled at managers and players these days, you know, from nameless people on Twitter and that, like, it's wrong.
Or as we call them in the local area, hurlers on the ditch. Look, I've experienced it myself. Obviously playing, you've experienced it from management. You do get abuse regardless of who you are or what you do. But I think we need to be more mindful nowadays of, like, recently, in recent times, we've had a manager come into Passage, and his attitude with mental health has been absolutely brilliant. You know, he tells us, come into the field, switch off. This is a place to be yourself, relax and enjoy the time you're here. And from my time with you, that was something I always gathered as well. When you went to the field, you know, not leave your problems at the door, but this is a place where you're amongst friends, you're amongst people that you enjoy spending time with. I think we play such a pivotal role, and it's only nowadays we're kind of seeing how big of a role we play in our areas.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, look, it's not about it's not all about winning. Like, it's the journey and the enjoyment and the comrades that you make, and you know yourself, like, they're great places, like dressing rooms, and you know the fun that you have in groups and stuff, like, and the messing and the crack and stuff, like, it's, you know, so when you walk away, it does leave a big void, like, you know, and you know, we spoke earlier there about retirement and, you know, filling that void of playing, like, it's filling that social void as well, like, you know, that's the one thing everyone misses, like, you know, when they finish, like, is the crack and the fun that you have in them groups and stuff, like.
And I just, you know, I'm time conscious. I don't want to keep you here all night, but I'm looking over a couple of things, and I've really enjoyed chatting to you so far. And one of the things I cannot let go, there's two topics. One, we talked about it at the start, and you're talking about journey 2013. Talk to me.
So look, it was, you can throw all the cliches in, like rider over stuff and all that, which it was, like, there's no point in saying otherwise. It'll live forever in the memory. It won't say long in the memory. It'll live forever for everyone involved, like, and it's something that we'll always talk about, like, and something that can never be taken away from us, like, and I suppose there's a couple of things that come to mind in relation to it, and we spoke about the journey, like, the importance of journey. That was an unbelievable journey from start to finish, and a couple of things stand out. Like, I remember our first or second league game was up in Ballydurn, and we played a couple of challenges at this stage. And I obviously wouldn't have known a lot of I'd have known the main fellas, I'd have known Thomas and all that. But I wouldn't have known Mark Wise, I wouldn't have known Killian Fitzgerald, I wouldn't have known Pa Welch. I wouldn't have known these guys, how brilliant they were, like, so I remember warming up in the school grounds in Ballyduff Upper on a mucky day. I had no idea were you playing the same day.
No, it was actually my 21st. You told me I could have the night off. The lads had to come back down from Ballyduff the Saturday night for the 21st.
Not good enough, man. Just not good enough.
This is what I'm on about. I had to put my birthday back a couple of weeks, and you still gave me slack about it.
But I remember warming up, and it was a mucky all day, like, and I remember saying to Liam Carey, we can win this, like, it was still only Aprilish, I think, and just a realization kind of came over me that day, like, that having spent maybe the previous 3 months pre-season training and challenges, I just remember saying to him, we can win this. And he was 100% in agreement. Yeah, we are good enough to win this, like, and now we lost the same day and we kind of looking at each other. So, look, we have a lot of work to do, but I suppose then, and you remember this one, like, a big thing was the Ballydurns tournament. Like, that was a top class
massive.
Not even winning it, but the teams that you're playing and the class opposition and being able to be competitive, but then to actually come out the other side and win it, like, was, it was a brilliant find, like, against Drum and Inch.
With the high respect to the Waterford Championship, it's a tournament obviously that we were involved in 2013. Regardless of the opposition you play in Waterford, like, every game we played in that Ballydurns tournament, like you said, the level of opponents we were playing, it was almost like a Champions League format.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Yeah, and I remember begging them for the years after to let us into it, like, and they actually came up against a lot of obstacles afterwards in trying to run off that tournament because, I think Croke Park weren't too happy with it. I can't remember the real reasons behind it now, but, insurance and different things came into it, because I think even that year it might have been a 16-team tournament, and in the end, it became too difficult, and it went by the wayside. But it was a huge thing to actually to win that year, and it kind of kicked us on and stuff. And I suppose, and I've learned this from a number of championship campaigns, like, you do need to suffer a loss. At some stage, like, if you can get away with it, like, at the right time, and you remember that year, like, our last game, we could knock Ballygunner out, but we were qualified, and we didn't, and we're kind of well bet in the end. But I just remember gathering the lads. I was a Sunday game, and then Tuesday, then we had a training session, and a number of ex-players had been training kind of underage that day, and they kind of come up to me, they kind of made a beeline for me, like, and fact they were useless last Sunday, this kind of thing, and I'm kind of there, yeah, just nodding and listening, like, and at the same time saying, well, they were, but we didn't have to win, like, but, and this fellow was useless, and that fellow was useless, like, and even brilliant hurlers like that, he was useless, like,
yeah.
I was kind of there, is this for real, like, so I remember just being kind of fuming, like, and just getting the lads into a circle beforehand, right? And gather them in the middle of the field and, right, lads, can I ask you something, like, because I know they would have went out for a few pints afterwards in passage, and they probably got an earful. So, lads, do you get much negativity from people, like, from passage people? Like, so one by one, we were cut to shreds, and I said, that's scandalous, like, and that's so wrong, like, all you have here is knockers, like. And I just made a vow to him, and the circle was always synonymous with us, and it was so important, like, that circle, like. And I just got everyone to close ranks. I said that night, I said, lads, from here on, until we win a county final, we're taking no notice of anyone outside this circle. Like, you're not to listen to anyone. It was a huge learning curve, and it was a huge kind of, how would you put it, the penny dropping moment. Like,
Yeah.
that it had been affecting lads all years. They had been going to pubs, they've been listening to negativity, like, and it was affecting them. Like, whereas I think
it's madness in like, especially a local area, because you're going out to do your best. And like, I had it before you came, and the year even you were there, like, and I would still hear comments nowadays, like, obviously I'm doing the podcast now and I'm talking about hurling and stuff, but like the 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, the 4 years where I was playing senior, I was ripped to shreds after every match in the pub by people in front of me. Every time I went to the pub, even if I was drinking or not, and people would be saying, like, I don't understand how you're playing. Why are you playing? And you're there going, I'm giving up my life. I'm training 4 or 5 times a week. I'm in the gym. I eat right. And I come into the pub and some fellas tell me, you're not good enough.
Yeah. No,
it's such a strange mindset.
I think the one thing to clear up as well, though, Milo, is like, it's not just a passage either. Like,
I've seen it's everywhere.
So many other clubs. Like, there's a culture there in pubs and stuff, and normally it's from people who never play, like, and very little knowledge. But it was something that kind of take me back, I think, that year, because the lads have been so good all year up to that match, like, and didn't need to win it, like. And I remember approaching it likewise, because I don't know if you remember, it was an August festival on the previous week in Passage.
Yeah.
I thought the lads go down and enjoy themselves, like, why not? They qualified, like, they were entitled to let their hair down. So, that our approach wasn't exactly top class going into the Ballydurn match, like, so.
But it's the point you made. It doesn't have to be, because we're already qualified. Like, again, it comes back to, like, I have this ethos on GAA, like training matches, challenge matches, league matches, and say you're playing Romore playing Ballygunner this weekend, and Ballygunner their second team out, and Romore will go out their full strongest team to try beat Ballygunner. There's 10 minutes left. There's 2 points in it. You maybe have 9 lads on the line who are currently busting, their arse to get a position on the team, and no subs are made because you're trying to win the match. It's a league match, or else it's a challenge match or a training match. The point of them exercise is to try other things and try other people, try different systems, try different formations, move people around. We're so caught up in the GAA with winning, it's crazy.
Yeah, and look, we mentioned about the underage, and where do you think all the problems are coming at underage with parents and officials, or not officials, team management abusing referees, like, because they're so caught up on the result, like, that's where the abuse of referees comes at underage, like, And
but it shows when you said about you let us have our hair down before the Ballygunner game. And I remember as well, of course, when we bet Mount Sion, we went back to the village that night and we kind of had a lock-in. Now, we didn't have a lock-in in the sense of we were in the pub all night. You told us to just stay in Passage, all the group, into 1 or 2 of the pubs, and we did. And again, like, even recently, and I'm not saying the current Passage setup, but even recent years gone by, and other teams, drinking ban, socialising ban, don't go, like, Killian Fitzgerald is famous for going play golf. Killian, you're not allowed to play golf, stay away from this. John Whitty, don't play soccer. Like, you have to have the balance, and you've shown that in 2013 with your approach in terms of, we already qualified, didn't need to beat Ballygunner. You let us go out after the semi-final, in a sense. We all stayed together. No one went on a mad session. We maybe had 4 or 5 points. We really enjoyed it, because this is the thing I was talking about Ballygunner recently. People are saying Ballygunner will be back training soon. They don't need to go back training. They've been working for this for 5 to 8 years. Let them enjoy it. Whether it's drink or they go off on a holiday or do. Like, we're so caught up in winning, and then when we win, it's like, right, when are the lads back? Let's get going again. Like, where do you live in the moment?
Yeah, look, you kind of, as you mentioned there, balance was a key thing, and even you mentioned John Whitty there. Like, I remember, I would have got a lot of stick, I would have got a lot of flack in, I won't say Passage, but, well, maybe behind my back I might have got a bit, but definitely in Park Rangers there was a lot of phone calls my direction when, if you remember, Park Rangers had a big league game that Saturday before we played Abbeyside in the first game, and we had about 5, 6 lads that were Moria playing fucking soccer at the time, like, But
yeah, sure. I didn't play the soccer because I went and played hurling.
Yeah, but I allowed John play that. you know, John played that day because John came from a soccer background.
Yeah.
You know, and John played for us then the following day, but I didn't allow anyone else because they weren't soccer players. They played in the off season to get fit, like, so I didn't allow them. So, but I allowed John to play, like, because that was nearly John's number one game, like. But John still started for us against Abbeyside. If you remember, we started horribly that day, like. But John got a ball on the Abbeyside 21. We're about 5 points down. He soloed the whole length of the field and kicked it into the top corner.
It's actually on YouTube. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's on YouTube. I remember the day I was playing corner forward, and now John won't mind me saying this. John's striking back then was horrendous, so I was delighted he kicked the ball, to be honest, because he was much better at kicking the ball than he was hitting it with a hurling.
Oh, it was a brilliant goal, yeah, absolutely brilliant. From about the 21, he kicked it into the top corner.
Yeah. He had some pace. That year before he got the bad injury, he was just some athlete. He had some speed.
Yeah, absolutely.
But going back on that journey, and I remember during the year we'd done a couple of different things together, and it's something you always emphasized when you were over Passage, and it's always about a group being together and doing different activities, and they weren't necessarily drinking. In our case, you know, we went up, we done a walk on a mountain, and we had a really nice chat when we got up there, and it was the time that the village was going through a tragedy, and it just for me, it really brings it back into focus about you. Like I said, I know you about 9 years now, and like I don't have a bad word to say to you. And I remember one incident in particular. We were going to play, I don't know if you recall, we were going to play Abbeyside, actually, the game you're on about. And you started Pa Welch ahead of me, and you had to tell me going out in the car beforehand, before we even got to training, that I was dropped, because I would have played 2 weeks before that against Drummond Inch in the Ballydurns final, and you had to tell me. And I remember thinking to myself in the car, I can react two ways. I can tell you effing blind, or else I can go the way that we should go. And I said, you know, it's about the team and get result. But for me, that summed up you in that sense, because you had a friendship with me and we got on really good with great crack off the field. But the minute I stepped out in the field, I was just one of the lads then. There was no treatment. There was no, and I don't mean treatment as in you would have started me, just in like how you'd approached it or dealt with it. Like you just said, look, I'm going to tell you before you go out, just so you know, you're not going to be starting. And I was like, the fact that you told me beforehand and you had the respect, and also you had not the courage, but it could have gone south. Like I could have shouted and bawled and kicked up a fuss in training then, like, but like it sums up you. And I remember the first meeting we had with you. I think your first meeting with us was in either late December or early January. And and the lads know this for a fact. And, you know, we were on the quay after, a couple of us in cars down in Passage, because that's the famous meeting ground. And we were down on the quay, and Mitchell Baldwin turned around and said, lads, we're going to win the fucking senior. That was one meeting we had with you. It's just, it's the effect, because you've brought Abbeyside, you brought Roemore, you brought ourselves. Of course, you had success with Youall. Like, you just have this thing where people buy into what you do. It must be great for yourself knowing, like, it's a serious attribute to have in life.
Well, a lot depends on the group too. I mean, I enjoyed it. And they were great groups, like the groups you mentioned, like the Abbeyside, the Roemores, the Passage, like, you know. But I can remember, funny enough, I spent a year with a Kilkenny team, okay, and our first challenge that year was up in Carriganore against Roemore. And you know my style, and I'm big into the circle and, you know, the camaraderie and what have you, like. And we beat Roemore that day. We beat them well. And afterwards, Roemore got into a huddle and they were talking, and whoever was over him, could have been Philip, was over him that year, and he was having a chat with him. And one of the lads from the team that I was with came over and said, look at them fellas with their hands around each other. Did you ever see the bait of that before? Like, you know? And I said, oh, Jesus, I'm going to struggle here. Like, you know,
this isn't the place for me.
So there went my whole philosophy anyway, getting these like into huddles and getting a tight group and stuff, you know. So, and look, it wasn't a good year for me. It wasn't a success. I wasn't able to do, you know, a lot of stuff that I like to do, like, you know. And So it doesn't work for everyone. Like, I was just lucky with the groups that I had to.
Yeah, it's look, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And I suppose on a positive note, what's the aim or the goal? Because you said you're doing one-to-one with players and different people. What's Peter Queally's goal for 2022?
I'd like to be successful with Romore again. We actually had a meeting and we spoke about it, and we won't say we set targets, but we would love to repeat some of the victories we had. Like, it's winning titles is one thing, like, but experiencing the euphoria that we did, you're kind of chasing the high. Like, it was euphoric, the win we had against Lismore this year. It was a monkey off their back. They've been beaten in 5 out of 6 quarterfinals. I know from talking one-to-ones with their senior players, like, it was really something that they felt a lot of pressure to try and get over, like, and to actually achieve that in the manner in which we did, like, yourself, there's wins and there's the 1 point wins where you get, like Ballygunner experienced last week, like, they're different, like, they're a different level of euphoria, like,
Yeah.
And we followed that up with another huge win where we're massive underdogs against high flying Dungarvan, and we're able to put back-to-back euphoric wins, like, and if we could experience that, get to knockout stages and get a couple of wins like that again, that's what we're chasing, like, that's what we want, like.
Yeah.
And I like the coaching. I must say, you're on about time and the time you put into things, and how do you have time for anything else? A lot of time goes into management. A lot of time. With the coaching with Sarsfields, it's just turn up on a Tuesday and a Thursday night, and I like that. It's just from a time perspective, like, and to spend more time doing things, downtime and stuff. Maybe in a few years' time, maybe just step away from the management and just do a bit of coaching and stuff, like, So we'll see how that goes. Probably need to have a bit of success with Sars to kind of promote that end of things.
Yeah, well, look, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you on this week's episode of I Love My Club By, which will be available on all of our social media channels. You can find us at Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Spotify at I Love My Club By. Peter, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I hope you've enjoyed the time, and you've given us a great insight into your own personal life, and plus also your sporting career. And I wish you the best of luck for 2022.
Thanks very much, Milos. Enjoy that too. Cheers, bye.
Wherever you're listening, whether it be Ballyduff or Ballygunner, Passage or Portlaw, Dungarvan or Dunhill, tune in to I Love My Club By, the podcast that brings you closer to camogie and hurling in the Waterford club scene. Don't forget, hurling is our passion.